Signals present
He's dead.
a Bon Mott's Halloween series
Zombie redneck torture family.
celebrating
He's still breathing.
horror
They're entirely separate species.
with in-depth analysis,
Well, we're not talking about reality here. We're talking about fiction. It's different, you know?
adult content,
So, what side of the rainbow are we working tonight?
adult language,
Soon all of us will have special names.
and spoilers.
The devils are really angels.
Join us.
I think I'm going crazy. Here they come.
Welcome back to MOTS-O-Ween 2016. I'm Jonathan Ian Manser, here with Steven Ormosi.
Hello.
Scott Thurlow.
Hey.
And Rich Perry.
How you doing?
Tonight we are reviewing Jacob's Ladder, a fantastic film which was my recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
So, Scott, would you like to start off with your usual funny log line?
Sure. So I think we've all decided that I had a number of them, but I think the best description is 1970s happens and Dying Dream the movie
Yes.
together.
So I'll give the actual brief synopsis of this film. Tim Robbins is in Vietnam, and things go poorly, and not in the way you expect from Vietnam, but in drug-fueled destruction.
A worse way.
Yeah. We cut to...
Is there a worse way?
Yes.
Yep.
The 1970s New York, where Tim Robbins is now a postman, and he's starting to see visions of angels and demons, and not in the Dan Brown way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's his adventures struggling with death and demons and all that jazz. So, we're going to move on to the actual introduction with Steven Ormosi.
All right. It's a pretty short introduction. We have this scene in Vietnam, as is made pretty clear. I think the movie opens on some helicopters flying by. Looks just like
Apocalypse
pretty
Now.
much every Vietnam movie you've ever seen.
Sure.
Sans the cheesy 70s music. And everybody's kind of having a good time. Tim Robbins starts out the movie deucing real hard out in the jungle. People are... He comes back and everybody's giving him a hard time about chiding him about it a little bit.
Would you say they're giving him shit?
I would.
All right.
Apparently, this has been happening a lot lately.
That's enough out of me.
Which actually, now that I think about it, is perhaps the reason why he's the last survivor, because he was getting whatever.
Sure.
He's getting everything out of his system. We'll get into that. But the platoon is kind of joking around a little bit, and then they get this call that something's going on out in the jungle. They're being attacked.
I thought, I always got out of it, that was the onset of the Tet Offensive, which is an actual historical thing that was happening.
Right. I mean,
Vietnam.
it seems like there's some kind of largish offensive happening.
If not that, something like it. Go on.
They all jump to attention to go start to fight, and a couple of members of the platoon start really freaking out. Like, one guy's like, something's wrong, he's grabbing his head. Ving Rhames is there. I'm just going to let that sit for a minute.
All right.
Ving Rhames is there, and he just starts puking wildly. It's like something is clearly wrong with these guys. It's not like the normal, all right, everybody get up and go, it's time to go fight. It's like you can't really figure out what it is, but something's going on. Right. And then Tim Robbins ends up in the woods. He gets stabbed in the gut, and then he wakes up as a postman in 1970s New York. And that's where the intro ends.
But that's the story of a lot of Vietnam soldiers. But I believe that they earlier on say that it's the Mekong Delta.
Yes, it is.
Is where they are. So
yeah. It does flash that.
A quick subtitle comes across. Yes.
So I mean, so since we're using this as our intro, it's a fairly short intro, but effective. You know, it hooks you right away.
Yes.
You get to meet these guys that are out, the guys in the platoon, and you get a sense of who they are as people just from the quick little jokes that they make.
Right.
And that's about it. That's all it's meant to do, and it does a good job of it. And it's action at the same time. It's kind of this laid back, here's the boring parts of war, and then you have the really exciting parts
the
of war.
The war parts.
And then it gets extremely disorienting.
And it gets incredibly gory and just very very disorienting, like you said, which I imagine is kind of what it's like when you're in a situation like that.
No, it's a good setup for how the rest of the movie's going to go too.
Yes,
Oh yeah,
agreed.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very standardish Vietnam scene.
Set
to
piece,
begin
if you
with.
will, kind of, yeah.
You've seen it before, and you've seen it done much better. But this wasn't the intent of this work.
Right.
Here, it was
It's
just
the
framing
framework.
the narrative
Yeah.
of what's going to happen
Exactly.
later. And when the experimental drugs or whatever it is happens, and people start... everyone's reaction is very different. Yeah, there's one guy who's just spinning around and yelling in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the camera sees his point of view, so it's very disorienting. You have Ving Rhames, who's bleeding from like the face, and like kind of convulsing.
Like
Puking
Eric
everywhere.
LaSalle's puking his guts out.
Yeah.
You have this
that's
one
right.
guy.
It wasn't Ving Rhames that was puking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But that was happening, is
yeah.
to be
I
clear.
like I said, it was very disorienting, and
Yes. You yourself were disoriented. Go on.
You have this one character whose eyes are just twitching as he sits with a goofy grin on his face as war is happening around him, and it sets this thing of this. You've seen this movie before, except you haven't seen it done with such
In
a
such
weird
a manner. Yeah.
view from it. So I think it was very effective for that, and because this is going to be an absurdist kind of horror piece, it works well too.
I don't know if I agree with the term absurdist, but I know what you mean by it.
Yeah.
But of course, I of course agree with everyone that it's a good setup and establishes like the tone and what you're in for.
Yeah, I generally use that as a blanket statement,
Sure.
but I don't mean generally
Right.
the definition of absurdist. I mean more of a kind of
A twist
has
on
an
it.
off.
Yeah.
it's a very
feeling to it.
surreal.
Yeah,
Yes,
surreal is
for
much
sure.
exactly. Yeah, agreed. And I'm definitely giving it a 1.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 1. Like I said, it's short and to the point, but it does its job very well.
All right, and Scott, we're on to you with the pretty lengthy body.
All right, so I'll try to keep it condensed. So yeah, as we said, it cuts off when Tim Robbins, the main character Jacob, wakes up on a subway journey, a trip home, so it seems, in New York on the subway train, and has an odd encounter with an unhelpful elderly woman. And so basically, like, it's as if like, I mean, it's sort of like, again, it's surreal in a sense, right?
That's a big understatement for how unhelpful
Yeah.
she was.
She didn't say a word.
Yeah,
the entire time. He asked her like 4 questions.
The most unhelpful.
I mean, he asked her one question 4 times.
The most unhelpful subway passenger ever in the world. But no, so like then like
Standard subway.
it's set up to be like he's going through his daily life. He has a girlfriend who is named Jezebel, which we'll touch upon. The names in this movie have significance, or have a reference at least. So yeah, it's as if the entire intro was a flashback to him, sort of again like his nightmare, shocking him awake, and then goes through his daily life, his daily routine, but experiencing again bizarre happenings, things like where he would see like. He describes them as demon faces appearing to him like in various settings and locales, and sort of like weird temporal shifts, like weird like loss of he wakes up from bed and didn't know like what happened the previous day, etc. so forth, and starts to uncover like at first this movie touches like, again I try to keep it dense, but this movie has a lot of like things packed into it where it's implied as if there's some kind of like army conspiracy where he sort of reconnects with his old platoon from Vietnam, and they decide to go to a lawyer played by Jason Alexander, who they claim that the army something was done to them during their time in Vietnam, and they're trying to uncover that. So like, which explains all the bizarre experiences they seem to be like happening. Like other members of his platoon contact him and explain their bizarre encounters, and he sort of assuages them like that. Yeah, it's happening to me too.
Yeah.
But then like it also like I referenced this during our viewing of it, where if anyone is familiar with, as if it were Scanner Darkly, where he wakes up for his one lover, but now she's a different person altogether, and he has a different family life. He has 3 kids, whereas with his other girlfriend, in quotes, he has no kids. He's just living in an apartment. So it sort of bounces back and forth here and there, and it becomes increasingly unhinged. He can't be sure what's happening to him. He's very confused by all these daily occurrences, etc. Until finally, at the end, he gets contacted by in quotes, a chemist from the army, who explains to him why he's been experiencing all these things, because they were running an experimental drug, like LSD style, like trying to enhance the soldiers in Vietnam to optimally perform and have the best kill ratio, which indeed they did, but not in the way they expected. So like all that, sorry, Ian wants to interrupt here.
See, it's interesting because you described the plot very well. except that it's not. It doesn't
do justice.
It's
to
not
what
a
actually
linear
happens.
story.
Yeah.
It's
No.
cuts up. You're as confused along the line, especially on the first viewing, of what Jacob's going through as Jacob is.
Exactly. Yes.
And it cuts back to Vietnam. It cuts to him in his one life. It cuts to him in another life. It cuts to him in Silent Hill.
Right. Sure. No, you're right.
But like when it cuts to the life with his wife so little that it's so jarring when it comes back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think she appears, twice?
Maybe 3 times tops, something like that. Yeah.
But there's one point where he's just like in bed with her.
Yeah.
You know? Which is so...
It's like right after he gets dunked in the
Yeah.
bath.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
So it has that. If you're familiar with Silent Hill, but in other works do it as well, there's this. It's hugely disconnected narrative.
Yeah.
To give you
It's
a sense
disjointed.
of, you're not sure when things are happening. If it's a flashback, if it's present day, if it's a dream state, if it's not, and it's handled incredibly well throughout this entire work.
Yes.
I'll say that. Yeah.
Agreed.
This being my first viewing, I was really trying to keep one of the big things that I was trying to do throughout the movie was trying to keep the timelines straight in my head. Like what was going on, like at any given time, where was it supposed to be in his life? Because there are 3 very distinct timelines that are happening in this movie. There's his wife and kids before war, there's the war, and then there's him and his girlfriend Jezebel after the war. And is what you're seeing. And so like
yeah.
but like parts of things kind of bleed into others, you know, in certain ways, and it's like you said, it's really well done. Once you figure that out, as long as you can keep those 3 straight, you can kind of keep up with what's going on. But I can see why this movie would be really confusing for people.
One of the things, this is jumping to style for a bit, but they tend to match colors.
Yes.
For what
I've always noticed that
timeline they're in. There's a very like blue tinge to his light with his first wife Sarah.
Yeah.
There's the green. I mean, Vietnam's obviously when he's in Vietnam, and then the majority of the work is focused on his life with Jezebel as a postman. But that even has a kind of
I would say
brownish,
orangish,
yellowish,
like sepia tone, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so agreed. On just real quick, like in full disclosure, Ian and I have seen this film a number of times, and Steve and Rich, this is the first viewing, so like we were familiar with it. So just keep that in mind as we do our analysis. But no, like that's basically So you're right, Steve. It sort of jumps back and forth, and it's disjointed on purpose. But I think they do a very good job of like still keeping you like along for the ride, if you will. Like it's not too confusing, right? So I mean, overall, it's supposed to be that way, but they do like they shadow that line very, very well.
It's supposed to be disorienting, not confusing.
Exactly. Yes. Well said. And I think they pulled that off, and I'm going to give it probably a solid 1 if we have anything else to say.
I just have one. I was sitting next to Steve-O, so I was actually watching his kind of processing of the movie.
Sure.
And I think he actually processed it fairly well, where he initially, for the first maybe half hour, 45 minutes of this, you're kind of lost between, you have to gather your bearings when watching this movie. Right. But then once like the halfway point hits, I think the average viewer should be able to at least
keep up,
understand when everything is and where everything is, and they now understand the rules of the world, and they play by their own rules very well.
Yes, that's a good point, a solid point, but I think it is true, and that therefore I will give it a very solid 1 to the body.
Definitely 1.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Film did a very good job in the body, so I'm going to give it a 1 as well.
I agree. I'm going to give it a 1. So, Rich, on to the conclusion with you.
Okay, so immediately after his last altercation with the mysterious men in the crazy driving car.
Men in Black, if you will.
Yeah. He gets picked up by his chiropractor, or broken out of the hospital by his chiropractor to realign his disc.
That's a great scene.
Yeah.
Again, it's a bizarre scene, but it works really well. Good.
It works strictly, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, because of Danny Aiello.
Yeah.
The chiropractor, and he is just taking charge and driving Tim Robbins
taking names, kicking ass.
Just scares everyone away from him.
What Say's like very upset about this. Very upset. He's walking him out.
Watch your legs.
Yes.
Watch your toes.
Watch the door.
He says, "Watch your toes."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He slams the door open with his feet.
So he like realigns his back and gives him this speech about how the demons that he could possibly be seeing He was what was the author's name?
Oh, I don't remember that. It's a good reference, though. I just
Yeah.
doesn't remember.
He
offhand.
references how the reason men see demons is because they're trying to burn away the previous life to help them move on to the other side.
Right.
And like if they were ready to let go, they would be seen as angels.
Yep, exactly.
So like he helps him stand up. He goes off. He comes back home. His girlfriend sees him for the first time in like 2 days apparently, and he gets a phone call from a chemist that was in Vietnam or in this like with him, and he tells him about this drug that he helped develop called the ladder, that was supposed to enhance the aggression in the soldiers and helped them to up their kill count, but unfortunately had the side effect of having them kill each other because there were no enemies to be found. They'd just gone crazy. So then he, after that meeting, he hops in a cab, tells him to drive him home. Cab driver's confused because he has no idea what he's talking about. He's like, no, just take me there. Shows up, meets the bellman, makes his way into the home, and just asks for his wife, his kids, sits down, waits, wakes up. It's daytime, and he sees his Macaulay Culkin.
That'll come into play later, yes.
Yeah. Sees his son that had passed away, who then leads him up the stairs to a white light, where it's revealed that this entire thing has taken place as a dying dream. And he...
In fact, is still back in Vietnam.
Yeah, he's still back in Vietnam and just finally passed away with a peaceful look on his face.
He's dead. And then the doctors say something like, "Guy gives a hell of a fight, but put up a hell of a fight, but not he gave us a hell of a fight. It's not like they were trying to kill him. He put up a hell of a fight, but he finally died or whatever." They call it, and then they walk out. So here's what I was going to ask. I did ask this earlier, but I think this is something that we should probably bring up.
Okay.
I think this is probably the right place to talk about it. There are other ideas about what happened in this movie, I guess, is what you brought up. Like, Scott, I think you said, like, there are people that think
there have been traditionally various interpretations.
I think
I don't see how.
However,
it's
really
pretty straightforward.
Obvious what happened, right?
I agree with you guys. Like, the film makes it pretty goddamn clear what they think, like, what they want you to think happened.
Aiello makes it
Danny Aiello definitely makes it clear.
Tells you.
And since he's
like,
in the film, it makes it clear. I'm just saying.
Listener.
No, agreed.
You.
Like, yes, I suppose you can, like... Not that I agreed with, like, the various interpretations that weren't the one that we're about to say, but I suppose on a stretch you could get that out of it. But based on the fact that the film itself seems very, very solidly saying this to you, that's what I always got out of it.
If you're not paying attention to this movie, I could see
then
coming up with alternate explanations.
If you got really, really drunk before you went to see this, like if you were gonna go review it, you're like, let's get really hammered, or let's do some LSD before we go see Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, but that's just
You
a
would
bad idea.
have their
anyway.
own version of Jacob's Ladder playing out in their
You'll be
head.
Jacob's Laddering in Jacob's Ladder. Be like Jacob's Inception.
Laddering yourself up to Jacob's
It's like,
Ladder.
is this movie trying to tell me I'm dead?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that'd probably freak you out.
What's your
for
lifeline
sure.
look like?
Yeah.
But
Says
for
you
sure,
should
like,
be
I
dead.
mean, of course I'm agreeing with you, Steve-O, in that sense. Like, it seems obvious what actually, in quotes, happened. You know,
Right.
like what the film wants you to think happened. Go on.
I mean, that's it. So I guess the other idea was that maybe this is all just an LSD flashback.
There was one idea
episode or
where
something.
it's him coping with the death of Gabe, of one of his kids.
Sure.
But that is, again, to me, like, pretty big of a stretch.
I mean, I don't know. Okay, well, here's the thing. That idea is built into what the actual story is.
Because that was
Yes.
pretty obviously the one thing that he had trouble letting
right.
go.
That's
Yes.
what he was holding on to.
You're right. But, I mean, like, because the last scene is, in fact, him dead on a hospital bed in Vietnam.
Plus, you hear his heartbeat in the background as he's playing through all of his memories
Yes.
with his family.
Exactly.
Really, really obvious. Like, very clearly he's dying and is dead at the end.
Or you have him in the body, tell Dea, you look like it. Did I ever tell you look like an angel with cherub cheeks? And he's like, with the white light shining behind him,
Yeah.
he goes, yes, every time I see
Yeah,
you.
all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
He's like, hold on, let me get in this shot better so that it's like framing like a
Let me
halo.
make it perfectly clear for you visually, yes.
And then you
So
have
anyway.
the doctor who tells him flat out that he's dead.
Yeah.
And he's like,
and
no,
isn't-
I'm alive. He's like, no, you're dead.
Yeah, he's very obviously annoyed having to tell him that he's dead.
yes.
Like, why should I have to tell you this? It should be really obvious that you're dead.
It's obvious Bill Murray.
Or Miss Cleo also tells him that he's dead at that
Yes.
point.
She was a lot nicer about it.
Yes.
She was.
She was very polite, but even so, yeah. So, anyways, all that to say that, yeah, it seems clear to me that is the case, and I think it was handled very well. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I think it was well done. I liked the ending. I liked the sense of closure that it gave.
Well, if I might say,
I think
that's the intention of it. It's Nim's life's closure.
Dying Dream, the movie,
Right,
as
that's the
I
entire
had said.
point. And I will say this: so they could have left off that entire last scene where he's dead, and it
made
would
it
have
more
made it
ambiguous.
way more
Yeah.
ambiguous. It would have
Sure.
made it way more ambiguous. If that's what they were going for, they would have done
That's
that.
what I thought it was going to end until
Yeah.
Scott said, "But wait, there's more,"
Yeah, exactly.
and then it just kind of hammered the nail in the coffin.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been pretty obvious without that, but with that, it was like, oh, this is exactly
100% obvious.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
just like I was
again-
I was waiting for an ambiguous ending because both of you had mentioned that there were different interpretations of this movie.
Yeah.
It had been a while since I saw it, so I
Yes,
didn't realize
same thing for me
how-
too. Definitive it
Yes.
seems. Yes, of course. Agreed. But again, having this recent viewing, that's obvious what they're going for, and again, I think it was pulled off very, very well.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah.
Definitely giving it a 1.
I'm giving it a 1.
Yep.
Oddly enough, I'm giving it a 1 because of
Danny
themes.
Aiello?
Oh,
I guess we'll
supporting
comment to
actors,
that. Yeah.
But thematically, it handles its business very well.
Yes.
And which I will explain in the next segment.
Momentarily, sure.
So I'm on to themes. This is about the closure of a personal narrative before death. And the fact that it's, in a way, hell is not a punishment. Hell is and it's a mental state of clinging on to life.
Yes.
And and this is exploring every element of Tim Robbins' character and what he's leaving behind and him coming to a closure
If
with
you
it.
think about it this way, this might almost kind of be a funny logline, but in a more serious bent, it's almost like, the cliche of like, when you die, your life flashes before your eyes. Like,
Yeah.
it's like that, but a very like solid
But
version
your
of it.
future passes before your eyes
Yeah,
in
like
this case.
everything. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, go on, E.
Well, it's sort of a limbo in
Yeah.
a lot of senses.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would call it more like a purgatory than hell.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. You're right
If
about
we're
that. And just
going
real
with the
quickly,
biblical thing.
there are even Dante references throughout the film, or
Right.
a little bit here and there. Anyway,
I mean, yeah, there's Camus references, there's Dante references, a lot of biblical imagery throughout this, but and like especially in the naming of characters. But
Right.
that's not what I'm particularly
it's
interested
not
in
your focus,
here.
yeah, sure.
I want to focus on what Tim Robbins had to get over and how that manifested
Okay.
in his demons.
Mhm.
So you have his son Gabe, played by Macaulay Culkin, who is
Uncredited.
yes.
in the film.
This is very important that we point this out.
So Macaulay Culkin had been killed while picking up cars in the street that he had dropped.
The
and
baseball
car
cards
had
from his bike.
swerved and ran into him. So throughout Tim Robbins is actually tormented by demons in this car that are driving erratically constantly.
Right.
And I believe, Rich, you actually pointed out, like, why is the car, like, they want to see it, why is
Yeah.
it driving so erratically? There's no need, because it's the
It's
same
a
car that
manifestation
killed him.
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have that angle. You have his wife, Sarah, who he's leaving behind.
Uh-huh.
In this limbo, he is with this woman, Jezebel, who is a demon for all intents and purposes. And but again, it's not like a malevolent one. It's more of like she burns photos of his family in ways for moving past
Right.
it.
Like
And
trying to offer
Yeah.
herself
Yeah.
up as somebody
She's
as a
a-
replacement for his
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah, exactly. She's a vessel kind of for that. Yeah.
And when he ends up in the hospital, his actual wife, Sarah, comes to visit him with his kids. And
There's one dickhead kid.
Yeah.
Which one
Yeah.
was that?
And they're
Eli?
That was Eli.
Yeah.
Fucking Eli, man.
they're divorced in the
That's when
purgatory
they gave him the
world.
photos too.
Well, an asshole kid anyway, so.
But it allows him to actually say goodbye.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Finally, there, he has the idea of, like, he saw himself get stabbed by one of his fellow soldiers. So the chemist, and I believe that George Costanza and his fellow soldiers all play, in a sense, the doubts of, like, oh, would the army do this? Could I even solve this? While the chemist is the rational part of his mind, giving him a actual kind of out in
Yes.
the sense that there could be a bit of drug that affected you this way. That's why you got stabbed by this, which is actually the final thing that he accepts. And the minute he accepts it, he can go to heaven. And I think that's I think those are the three main things he fights against.
Yes, I agree with that.
I would say it's not the last thing, though. I think the last thing is that he says goodbye to his son Gabe, who actually quote unquote leads him to heaven.
Yeah.
Sure. He reconciles himself with that. But also, just real quickly, I just want to mention that after the final scene, there's a quick scroll where it implies like the military possibly did indeed experiment with drugs on their soldiers during the war.
Oh yeah, I think that's
Should make complete sense.
That's a big reason that.
Sure, yeah, I don't disbelieve that, but I mean, there's a reason for that to be in the film, is what I'm saying. So,
and also, you did a really good job describing all those things. I think it's actually kind of brilliant that this movie had so many usually it's like, in films that have this same kind of theme where it's like you need to let go before you can die and go to heaven. It's like, oh, there's one thing that you've been holding on to.
Yes.
This one is like, no.
It's more subtle.
Multiple things.
Yeah, like a human life is way more complicated than that. There's all these things that you need to figure out and
No, you're right.
done with.
And I think it's brilliant.
Before you can let go of all those things.
I think it's also brilliant that they played it through so many supporting characters as well.
Yeah,
yeah. No, you guys are both right about that, and I agree. It's very subtly handled and deftly handled.
There's two other parts that I want to mention here.
Okay.
So not the opening scene of Vietnam, but the opening scene of the body where he's in the subway, and he is actually locked out of his stop, so he has to cross the tracks to get out the other side, and he almost gets hit by a train at that point, which his son got hit by a car. So I don't know if that was.
It's a foreshadowing,
but it shows a bunch of ghostly figures on the subway car as it goes by, which I take, especially upon multiple viewings, as in a sense those souls who are crossing over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you also see he meets up with the initial member of his troop that he meets up with on the outside ends up dying in a car explosion. And I could definitely see either on the battlefield as he's being carted out, or I think at this part they showed him in the helicopter with the wounded soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That guy having been next to him and
being blown up in some way,
or had been blown up, and then he died while Tim Robbins was still trying to fight.
Right.
Again, there's a lot.
Plus, he has that look of contentment on his face after having that conversation with Jacob.
Yeah, and actually, that's a really good point. But I think that you could really scalpel this work apart to see all the thematics here.
So
but I'm going to stop there.
Let me ask you guys this: do you take this as a kind of in between life, like a
limbo thing?
literal, like biblical sense?
No.
Idea of what happens in between life. Do you think that he actually talked to the souls of his comrades in this, or do you think that was just all in his head?
I feel like it's a little bit of both. I'm gonna Harry Potter the hell out of this.
All right, go ahead.
That last conversation that Harry had with Dumbledore.
Go for it. Where
he says that is this a dream, and he says, "Well, of course it is, but does it make it any less real?"
Yeah,
I think it was just a shared dying dream between all of these soldiers that were trying to cross on.
That's a really good point, Rich. You might have
See, I
change what my answer is going to be, but go ahead, Steve.
I think that it doesn't even really matter in the end, but this is something that I just keep coming back to and thinking about. Do you think that his interactions with them were real, or do you think they were a manifestation of his own mind?
I was trying to cut up the difference. Of course, my bias is that I would like to remove the religious bent from it. Right. I think it was, again, a hallucinatory dying dream, possibly also caused by the actual drug, whatever he was dosed with in Vietnam. But I like what Rich just said. Even if it's not, it doesn't make it any less real, regardless. I guess I want to say. Well, however, it's being induced.
I mean, it does. So to me, it does, because it's either
why if you're hallucinating, you think it's real.
Either them, their actual.
No, well, that's what I'm going to say. It's either their actual
spirits,
interactions,
if you will,
between them, or it's him making up what he thinks they're all going to say.
I think it's the latter. At least I like to believe
the latter.
The latter, yes.
So, I would
the puns
generally say that the majority of the characters, especially from the Vietnam era, were products of the mind. But I definitely think that the guy who died from the explosion was
part of
real.
his platoon.
I want to say that too, because that's how. Because I'm
That's
not.
how it comes
I'm not
off.
interested in. No. Well, let me say this.
I think it's
because
both.
I'm not interested in the like religious aspect of this. I'm interested in the psychological aspect.
Right.
But I wonder what the screenwriter and the director thought about that
Well,
as they were making it.
The true answer is to get him on the horn.
We'll get them on the horn. We'll
your
see what
show.
they think.
Here's the thing: is there's so much reference to like Dante's Inferno and some like this, I think that had the intent for the not necessarily because it's never defined directly as being a biblical story.
Yeah, I think it's trying to.
I think
like,
there's a spiritual nature to it that has a reality.
I think
versus
you
just
could also look at the fact that his one friend that he was talking to, like in that bar, had pretty much the most of a character arc. It's like when he ran into when he ran into the rest of his platoon members, there was only one guy who like actually stood out from them. Yeah. Was the one that claimed that he hadn't seen any demons, hadn't seen anything, wasn't going crazy. And then everybody else just kind of became a collective. Like
here's a good question too. I guess this probably fits into themes. What was the point of that guy?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I
was assuming that he was the one that assuming that he was the one that moved on the fastest.
I think I got that of it. Like traditionally, upon my first viewings of this movie, yes, that's true, Rich. But also, it's sort of like the same thing that the chemist represents, where as if like you just sort of ignore, like you're ignorant of like the greater implications at large, like or maybe the drug affected him differently. Like it's sort of like you can get like nuanced aspects of all of that, and he represents that kind of thing.
I figured either he was the one that moved on the fastest, or he was the one that survived.
Yeah, I think both of those are equally valid, but it's something like that.
Or if they're not necessarily spirits, but they're in a way representations of Vietnam and the doubt he has in what happened.
Yeah.
This guy, he would have known all of these characters and would have, because
perhaps this guy was the most, I don't know, like didn't believe.
Yeah,
yeah,
it was a Dr.
exactly.
Thomas.
Yeah, that's what we're getting at. Yeah. But either way,
check his name, see if his name is Thomas.
It's still effective.
Yeah.
I don't think he even had a name, but I mean, if they were going to slap a name, that might be pertinent there.
Like honestly, so you said that like there are people that had questions at the end of this movie. I think those questions are pointless, and that is dumb. I think it's really clear what happens at the end of this movie. I think the bigger and better questions.
So to be clear, you're
I
saying
think the bigger and better questions.
Everyone is terrible people and also wrong. As you said,
everybody
on the
that's
previous
wrong about this
podcast.
is just wrong.
Yes. Okay.
And that's my statement.
All right. Fair enough.
If you're wrong, then it turns out that you're
regardless,
wrong.
I think they handle. Go ahead.
But I think that the more important questions come in the middle of the movie, like questions like the one that I just said, and like things like that are what are actually going to make me keep thinking about this.
Sure, but regardless of all that, I mean, we just talked about at length. I think they handled a number of heavy themes subtly, but like both subtly and not. But regardless, very, very well. Again, in all senses, in all cases.
And I just want to reiterate before I give my score for this, which I'm obviously giving you a very, very strong one. It's the best part of this movie.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah. That you can really, you can Waldo this work to the point of overanalyzing everything, because I think that there's a lot that you can pull out of this, and I think that you're legitimate to go in and really dissect it, because this is a fascinating work with a lot of layers.
I agree. It's Waldo's Ladder, and I'm giving that a 1.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 1 as well.
You know, 1 2.
Hell yeah.
The old 1 2.
The old 1 2.
And enough of that. On to antagonists with Steven Ormosi.
Oh, me? All right. So
this is a really good one.
I was trying
actually.
to think of this. It's really interesting because the antagonist, especially if this is all in his head, like what I lean towards, has to be the same as the protagonist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
you stole my fucking answer, but I think that is true.
Jacob is both. It's the warring
He's his
sides
own
of himself.
antagonist, is what you're going to say, right?
It's the warring sides of himself, which is really interesting. And there are, a million characters in this movie, but they all kind of boil down to him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like Elizabeth Pena, who plays
Jezebel.
She could be for a long time of this movie considered the antagonist.
I guess so.
Except that you realize that it's not malevolent to what she's intending to do.
Yeah.
They flat out say it in the movie that she's trying to help him move on, you know?
And that's what's really interesting about this movie. It's in a sense the sins of your past, or
the way he what got me with her, like when he flashes back to him being with Sarah, and he talks about her. She's the cute girl at the post office. Like, was he working at the post office before he joined?
To answer your question, which I've always got that, it's implied that I think before he was shipped out or drafted, if you will, to Vietnam, that was his job. Yes.
So he specifically chose her.
Yes.
As that representation.
As a manifestation, if you will. Yeah. That's what I got out of it.
Here's the issue I have with that. You might be correct, but he had a doctorate, and they say that he became a postman after Vietnam
because he didn't want to
deal with it. Yeah.
But that might not necessarily.
But does it matter because he died in? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Well, he could have been,
itself,
putting himself through school or something.
Yeah.
At the post office,
exactly.
There's a side job.
I think this is
they don't really say.
There are many interpretations.
They call him professor.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because he's smart and has glasses. He's in the army. It's not like they fucking stand on ceremony there.
I think that's what sort of the genius of this film is. It's unclear. You can get all those interpretations out of it if you wish to, but they're all valid and legitimate in some way.
Here's the thing:
I'm not sure they call him professor because he has a doctorate, though.
He does have he specifically has. You see a master at least.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, when he pulls out his memoirs,
and they make reference to him owning a doctorate.
Yes.
Yeah, they do call him doctor.
So I'm just saying.
And
or the
Danny Aiello
the doorman does as well.
Oh, that yeah.
And Danny Aiello mentions that Sarah left him because he had a doctorate and became a postman after Vietnam. And he says he became a postman because he couldn't handle thinking anymore after the things he's witnessed in Vietnam.
It's kind of convoluted, but I see what you're saying.
But I think that he had a pretty nice flat.
Sure.
So what the hell was he doing at that post office? Checking out the local post office hotties?
It was the 1970s. You probably visited the post office more often than
he was at the post office every day.
Yeah.
I guess, but
he didn't have a mailbox.
Right. I mean, it's kind of a funny bent, but I think not that it's moot, but it's not the most important aspect of this.
It could have been. It's said to be like having a crush on a local barista or something.
So
like that.
this is about the antagonist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Who or what then is the antagonist?
The post office
is the antagonist.
The antagonist.
Well, that's always been always true.
Bukowski would agree with you.
Yeah. No, I think what you originally said is right. That the struggle against yourself, psychologically, of course, is the antagonistic element of this film. I think again, it was because of the nature of it and because of all the elements came together so very well that it was effective as hell.
And I like how every one of the things he needs to let go was manifested.
Right. You're right. And it was, and you also
yeah.
got a sort of point. It wasn't like a blanket thing. A number of things. You're right. Human people aren't as simplistic as that, so therefore he had a number of things to try to work through, and was letting go of each of them piece by piece.
So this was one of the ones that I wasn't 100% sure about because it's such a nebulous
concept
answer,
yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But I think that
at the end of the day,
thinking about it, I'm going to give it a fairly strong one, because, and as I say fairly often recently, it's becoming my go-to. Perhaps I should get another phrase to
the new
say,
catchphrase,
but
motherfucker.
He's definitely being antagonized throughout the movie.
Sure.
He's running, and you definitely feel tension, stress about his situation.
And more so than that, you feel how powerless he is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whether it's him hurting his back and being stuck in Silent Hill Hospital.
Oh, that was terrifying.
Oh, yes.
And probably the most horrifying.
You see him quickly break down to tears.
Yeah.
As he's being wheeled.
That might be the most horror moment of the whole film.
Yeah, absolutely. But the vague U.S. Army and trying to get them to admit to doing wrong. And how powerless he is to stop that. Or every single element, you feel his lack of control.
Yes.
And I think that's very important for the antagonist.
Yeah.
I agree, and I'm going to give it a very strong 1.
I completely agree with that.
1.
Okay, and Scott, it's onto you with protagonist.
So, other side of the coin, of course, like, because of the nature of the film and everything we just said, yeah, Jacob is the absolute protagonist, and so his psyche is sort of filled out, as we said, like, by the various characters that populate his dying dream, if you will, and, like, assuming that he actually did have a wife that, and his recollections of her and his family, like, yeah, he goes through, like, a very harsh journey, really, at the end of the day, but he eventually, of course, accepts his fate, and they even said, like, when the ending scene, the final 2-minute scene, he looks peaceful now. Looks like he's at peace, right? He's finally, like, accepted what's happening to him and everything that's occurred, and parsing it all, like, trying to make sense of it in his own, like, again, distorted sort of half hallucinatory memories and actual memories. So I think Tim Robbins did a great job portraying what that would be like.
So if Jacob is both the protagonist and the antagonist, which parts of him are the protagonist and the antagonist? Now let me frame this.
Okay.
Is the part of him that is trying to hang on to life the protagonist or the antagonist? Or is the part of him that is trying to let go the protagonist or the antagonist? I think that's
an amazing question. But I think you're sort of approaching it possibly in not the correct way. Or, sorry, I interpreted it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way you pose that question. It should be like a hurdle. It should be like a roadblock to us, or possibly start another like hour conversation. But think of it this way: instead of that, it's that he's trying to reconcile with himself. So it doesn't matter what parts, like per se, fall on one side or the other. Really, it's just that him trying to, again, how shall I phrase this? Him trying to overcome himself.
Right, but certainly
So,
one
like,
part is antagonistic.
Right.
Like,
I know what you're saying. Again,
the antagonistic
I
part.
know what you're asking. I understand. I think it's not. It's again not quite moot, but you shouldn't focus on that per se.
But I think
Focus
that's
on himself being a whole person.
I would say whichever part freaks him out the most, personally.
I think it's a really interesting question though, because so think of it this way: his the part of him that wants to move on is what is manifesting itself as demons the entire time. He's fighting against it the entire time.
The part of him that wants to hold... Wait.
The part of him that wants to move on.
No, to hold on.
No, see, see, that's a subtle difference.
Oh, yeah, I suppose so.
You see what I'm saying?
So the quote-unquote demons are there to try and help him move on, but he sees them as demons because he wants to hold on.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So the...
See? It's difficult, I know.
It's a very funny question.
I understand. It's a quagmire,
Danny
really.
Aiello.
Danny Aiello, protagonist.
No, yes. Here's the thing: is the blue rooms are the manifestations of the best of him, or in a way of what could be, what could have been, and
I think that's the manifestation of his past that he remembers that he's happy with. It's not what could be; it's what was.
That is
what
at
he
peace
had.
with.
What could have been. I would say that if he had survived. So yes, that's part of holding on, and it's such a weird thing because it's not like there's a clear, distinct thematic or cutoff for the protagonist of or whether what he's good for himself or what he's bad, because it's counterintuitive. Right. The idea is that you want to hold on to all the best parts of you, and sometimes the negative parts of you, and it's the demons are doing something. It's like a doctor giving you your medicine you don't want to take, even if that involves getting a drill through the head,
getting plunged into a ice bath.
I will say
getting all of your photos stolen and or burned.
I will say it's one thing. Like, yes,
asshole she was.
That's a very I like that you propose that question, but I think it's again, if not moot, the genius of this film is that you can take it both ways. It addresses both of those, sort of like at the same time. So he's playing both parts.
It almost relies on the audience, like whichever...
Yeah, exactly. And it's your subjective interpretation, kind of.
Here's the thing is, I was rooting for him the entire time. And...
Well, which way?
But now you know that... But at the end of the movie, you know that you're rooting for him to hold on to something.
Yes.
No, you're rooting for him to die?
Because...
To let go, if you will, yeah.
Especially upon my... Because I know the ending, but here's the... Tim Robbins is such a fantastic actor and was incredibly charming in this, that I was rooting for him the entire time to overcome
whatever
everything that was
obstacle,
antagonizing him. And when he's being antagonized, he is, in a way, oddly enough, you have the, I think the more interesting way to frame this is that the antagonist is usually a creation of the protagonist, in a sense, or it's kind of that, like, Tim Robbins is primarily the protagonist simply for the fact that he's antagonizing himself.
Right.
It's such a weird,
Right.
it's such a hard description.
Like I said, that's kind of the genius of this film to me in that sense. But I think however you want to parse it out, you can rabbit hole ourselves into it. But I think they both get a 1 because they're sort of like reflections of each other.
Yeah.
I just have one final. It's the it's unintentional self-destruction with either Vietnam drugs or God and the devil helping him along with that.
Well, like that, like the posters in the train said, drugs are hell.
Yeah, exactly. It was amazing foreshadowing, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really good little touch. But either way, I have to give this a very strong 1.
Yes.
Both ways.
Same.
Yep, 1.
All right, Rich. Supporting characters.
Oh, my favorite bit of the movie. I'd have to say, like, the supporting characters are the most important part of this movie.
Even though they didn't exist?
Yeah, even though they didn't exist. But since it was just...
Well, again, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
I would say. Go on.
Since it was... Like, all the supporting characters were basically, I think we can agree on, just parts of his mind at war with himself, trying to help him move on.
Yes, exactly.
But I think the most important ones I feel, are the ones that took a more... Like, the more rational parts of his brain that took a more...
Active role, maybe?
Yeah, not really active, and not really... I guess helpful.
I see what you're saying, yes.
A lighter touch, I guess, to help him move on.
Perfect.
Like, you have the chemist, you have Danny Aiello, you have his war buddy.
Yeah.
Because, the war buddy, helps him, starts him on the path. Like, he's the first person that he met that
he, quote-unquote, contacts,
yeah,
if you will.
Contacts and, validates his visions that he's seeing. And then you have Danny Aiello, who's giving him that possibility that maybe the demons that you're seeing are trying to help you, and then the chemist that gives him that out, that gives him that ability to accept his fate.
I want to mention something about Danny Aiello, because I mentioned nothing about him so far. I think that if you want to take the biblical look at this for thematics, Danny Aiello is actually not a creation of his mind, but would be an actual representation of an angel or a guardian angel, if you want to take that.
Transitioning him, sure.
Yeah. I also see him as dead.
I like to run off that too.
All right.
Oh, if you're not done.
I just don't want to, or if you want to look at it as in the strict kind of psychological aspect of it, he's the only male who has a paternal kind of interaction
rapport.
With
he always shows up once he reaches the worst of his visions.
Yes, yeah, that's very much true. True.
And he's just he coddles him. He literally coddles him and
yeah. Sure.
Brings him back to full strength.
I agree with all that. I'm just going to bring a moment of levity because we've been we have a very good discussion so far, but I like to say Elizabeth Pena's boobs were an amazing supporting character because she was naked for much of the film, almost 90% of the scenes she was in.
But it's not quite 90%. That's a little bit much.
It's up there.
A lot.
Anyway, in fact,
she's very sexy.
Although, as Tim Robbins comes to accept his death,
she's less and less naked.
Gets more and more clothes.
Sure. I'm just
especially when she shows up as one of the nurses.
Yes,
in that
exactly. You're right. In the hospital scene. Yeah.
Strange.
So in the Silent Hill scene, sure. But I'm just saying, we appreciated that fact. Yes,
but she also becomes.
Sorry, we're a bunch of sexist assholes here. Yeah, so I apologize, but it was very nice to see on screen. But I think she was a great character as well, for what she represented to his psyche.
Well, let me. She also becomes less and less part of the film. She's such a big part of the opening.
She's
scene.
front loaded, yeah.
And then she kind of gets weaned off of her throughout the end of the movie.
I think it starts right when she has the black eyes and the creepy teeth.
Yeah. And he pushes her into the
dresser, and she runs off.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I just wanted to mention the nudity aspect of that. Is I don't think it was just.
It's not gratuitous.
But
I know.
In horror, you would have nudity for the sake of it. thematically it made sense for this character to be the seductress.
Sure.
And
Well, she also had a bit of like, because like once he starts having these visions and like starting this journey, like she strips down every time she sees him stressed.
Yeah,
like
it's
especially
a coping mechanism, kind of. Yeah,
like when she sees he's frazzled when he gets home from his overtime shift, he hops in the shower. She jumps in the shower with him, and then she bares her breasts like when he's looking through the photos and starts crying.
Yeah, exactly. You're right about that. Yeah, it's a really nice touch. But all I'm saying again, I tried to bring a bit of levity here. But either way, I think that they all did a very good job. Especially Aiello, I think, is probably the standout one.
Hilarious.
Okay, I have
We just lost all of our women viewers, listeners.
What women viewers?
Yeah, which ones are those?
I think women are the only ones that listen to this show.
Sexist.
Best joke of the night. Go ahead, sir.
So there's two other characters I want to mention for supporting roles. One is Shady Santa Claus.
Yes,
who robs
Tim
Robbins.
More of a cameo, I guess. But I know you love that scene.
He's my favorite demon out of all of the ones that he's run into.
And yes, it's funny and all, but go on.
And then creepy old woman in the subway station.
Yeah.
She was, her eyes. She could
unsettling,
throwing shade everywhere.
Yes.
What about random worm demon that shows up from time to time?
Only twice, really, but that's not even really a character.
Shaky head devil guy.
That's more of a prop.
Shaky head devil man.
Oh yeah. What was the effect called, Rich?
Undercrank.
Yeah, let's give credit here where Jacob Slatter pioneered this effect. And
what's it called? Undercrank.
Undercrank.
Oh, undercrank.
Where you've seen it.
Yeah,
you've definitely seen it in other films where,
especially House on Haunted Hill, the remake. They do that a lot in there.
People's faces unsettlingly shake back and forth as if they're vibrating and become blurred.
So
anyway,
the guy that shows up maybe twice, maybe more than twice, with the shaky head, and the beard. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Was he ever introduced as any kind of character?
I don't remember.
Was he in the background of Vietnam or something? Or
I don't think so.
May I?
You may. Sure.
So, this is going back to thematics for a moment, but I'm more on the side that this isn't a strict biblical reference. It's, in a sense, Tim Robbins, who has religious upbringing in his past, and he's also, he at least has his master's, if not his doctorate. So he's a very knowledgeable individual.
Sure.
You can see he's playing upon what he expects when he's dying with the both heaven and hell imagery.
Right.
And this guy was a kind of standard view of what you think the devil would look like.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see him projecting
why does the devil always have a goatee?
Because goatees are badass.
Bias. Yeah. Goatees are evil, apparently. But no, I mean, that's pretty... I like that point. I can see that, and I can roll with it.
I do like, and this is also going back to themes, how often they illustrated how useless the cross
biblical
imagery was. Because when he runs into his friend, he's just like, "Oh, I carry these with me. They're useless.
They haven't helped me at all.
They ain't doing shit."
Exactly.
Yeah.
They haven't protected me from shit. Okay. Sure.
But then, it also gets kind of he also gets kind of comforted by it when he's with the taxi driver and he sees the cross hanging off.
You're right. So again, it's sort of like the percussion double-edged sword. So either way, I think all the second characters are quite good,
absolutely,
quite well rounded, and I will
agree.
give them a solid 1.
One's Unos.
All right, and I'm going into dialogue, which I have a terrible memory, so I don't like any of the lines, but I know there are some great lines in this work. I'm going to say one, which is building off the Santa Claus thing. He ends up, while fleeing some G-men, he ends up hurting his back and is robbed by Santa Claus, or just a bell ringer on the street. And then when he ends up in the hospital, and they're questioning him, like, "Oh, we found him on the street. He has no ID." And what happened? Who are you? He's like, "Santa Claus robbed me." Yeah. And it's a great little, not quite a brick joke because it's in media, but a nice setup and punchline. But there's some great philosophical discussions in here.
Yes, exactly.
So they border on being kind of heavy punching of philosophical, but I don't think it ever goes over that line. And there's some very funny moments as well. So, any of you have any thoughts?
No, I mean, the speech, if you are holding on to life, then you'll...
I got the entire speech right here.
Yeah, why don't you read it out for us, Rich?
I found it. It was Meister Eckhart. 14th century Christian mystic.
Okay, nice.
So Aiello's speech, Eckhart saw hell too. He said, the only thing that burns in hell is the part of you that won't let go of life. Your memories, your attachments. They burn them all away, but they're not punishing you. He said, they're freeing your soul. So if you're frightened of dying, and you're holding on, you'll see devils tearing your life away. But if you've made your peace, then the devils are really angels freeing you from the earth.
Yeah, and that's pretty fucking amazing. That's a solid ass speech.
So hold on loosely, but do let go.
Yes. Yes.
No, I like it. But no, I think it was very, very solid throughout. And the interactions, again, between him and Jezebel and him and his, again, former Patriots or platoon members, etc. Just everything, I think, was solid. Like, zero cringeworthy moments at all. And zero, like, moments where I thought that was a weird, like, they could have rewritten
Macaulay
that.
Culkin.
No, but perfectly fine. Macaulay Culkin, first of all, like, had like 3 lines of dialogue, so that hardly mattered.
Yeah, but you openly cringed when he talked.
I did not. He was a kid.
I guess Ian did.
He was supposed to be a kid, and he had children lines. Like, what do you want me to say?
Yeah, Macaulay Culkin was chewing scenery even in this movie before he was in Home.
Was Charlton Hessening it?
I guess if you say so. Like,
but here's what I'll say about the dialogue. If I'm gonna give anything in this movie a 0, it's gonna be dialogue. I cannot remember any of the dialogue except for the Aiello speech.
Okay.
Which, granted, very good speech. You're right. It's not really cringeworthy. But I view this as the weakest point of this movie. I think that everything else is much stronger.
Yeah, but is it bad? Like that's here's like we sometimes fall into this trap. So I guess I'll ask you this.
It's not terrible, but
no,
I don't.
Not by any means. Sure, it's not like
it's.
There's nothing.
Like,
there's
nothing
nothing.
to spit lines from the movie in anyone's faces or anything. But did you think it was? I guess here I'll phrase it this way. Did you guys think it was realistic, believable, and meaningful to the movie?
It was completely realistic, almost to his detriment.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Like, yeah, it was realistic. I don't remember any points of it or thinking like, oh, this is unrealistic. Tim Robbins does a terrific job delivering the dialogue.
Yeah.
But I literally cannot remember any lines except for the one you just read.
All right.
Miss Cleo?
And and she says that that this says you're dead already. I can't remember any of the rest of that entire thing that she really says.
I do have to say, like, it's probably why I give it a 1. Just the dialogue that changes with the manifestations that are supposed to be the demons. Because it starts off with, of course, Miss Cleo.
Yeah,
as we named her, giving him the
as a shorthand.
Yeah, giving him the news that he's dead. That he's dead and that he should let go. And then you see
there is the repeated
motif.
Like the dialogue just gets more harsh as it goes on. Where you have that doctor in the hospital scene telling him, "No, you're dead." Why? Like what? Like
there's
look where you're at.
Repeated motif. Oh, his can't tell left from right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think that's about?
I have no idea.
I was trying to figure that out while I was watching the movie.
It's a humanizing aspect of Tim Robbins.
I think
the smartest man I know. You can't tell your left from your right.
I think there's something deeper to that. It's
Maybe,
kind of like the whole.
But the question at hand is
so the whole idea of the left hand thing being like the sign of the devil back
left
in the
hand
day.
of evil.
Like, there has to be something between the left and
maybe
whatever. Not like we're gonna figure it out.
There might be
now,
something into that, but the question at hand is dialogue. So. I mean, you're sort of, it seems, on the fence, Steve-O.
I am on the fence. I think I'm probably leaning, after hearing all 3 of your arguments, I'm probably leaning more towards a 1 on this.
Sure, you can give it a soft 1, but I think it deserves a 1 still.
I mean, this is basically,
my argument.
I sketched it in a soft 0 because this is the only question that you would even think of giving a 0 to on this movie.
Sure, fair enough.
But I think I'm going to give it a 1. Overall,
like I said, you can give it a soft 1, but
like it's gonna be a flawless movie.
Yep, Rich.
You're gonna have to give it a 1 too.
All right,
but like he brought up a very good point. How realistic, just because the dialogue was so realistic, it was like hard to really pick out anything that was worth it.
Yeah, but see, I think that's a credit to it. But that's all. That's my final case.
Yeah. And I'm going to hop into style for a second, but I just want to make a reference. It felt very much like a 70s style dialogue from what I remember from other films of that era, which is just kind of that banter-ish, but not witty banter. It's just
like
general
like
everyday
workaday
type
stuff. Yeah, sure.
So that and also one last thing about hey, Mr. Postman.
Yes.
That's the thing that went. So
That might be
I
a-
wonder if those were angels or demons.
That might be a swaying. They're the choir of angels. Mm-hmm.
There you go. Eh?
It's like, hold on, we're not finished with our song. Sorry, we don't know the rest of the words.
So, style. I'm usually the one that brings up music. The music in this was good. It was very
Atmospheric, I will say.
very atmospheric. There's one part that I remember that we all remarked on because this is like really dark undertone at the end of the movie when he sees Macaulay Culkin again, or like right before he sees Macaulay Culkin again. He's getting up off the couch after, for some reason, falling asleep for several hours and turns into day, and there's this dark, like, just really ominous music, and you're kind of like, oh, this is where it happens. This is where whatever shit's gonna go down is about to go down, and I guess it kind of does. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was.
not what you thought it was.
It wasn't dark at all.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed. Felt let down.
But the style of this film is pretty incredible.
Yes.
The director does an amazing job. We already talked about the filters that they use for the different timelines. There are some like really great smash cut from like one scene to something completely different, and you just like it's supposed to be disorienting, and it's perfectly disorienting.
Yep.
The 70s funk horror orgy.
Yeah, that was amazing too.
There's a great
Damn it,
70s
Rich,
funk
I was
horror
really
orgy, where his girlfriend gets torn.
Oh yeah,
through
that
her
was
face.
penetrated.
that was the scene that I was talking about. That I really enjoyed the style of this movie because they never fully show the demon that's dancing with her. Like they show like different parts of its body to show you like the size of this thing.
Tentacles and shit.
And since it's MOTS-O-Ween, it's almost like a Arthur Mandis thing, like just unnamed horrors or tentacling happening. But anyways,
tentacling in progress.
Hentai.
It was a really good use of the strobe light.
Yes,
to
exactly.
add to the disorientation.
Yeah, it was very good. I guess
So
I'll
go
leave it
on.
off there. I mean, there's.
So I just wanted. I think I was going to mention this in themes, but I'll mention it now. The sexuality of the demons in this was fascinating.
Danny Aiello. All day, right, guys? No? Nobody?
All day.
All right.
Every day. Sure.
But the first demon you see is this homeless guy on a bus whose face is covered by... It's also a ragman type thing.
Yes.
And you see a tail, but it's very phallic. Then you have the demon at the... what'd you call it, Rich? The funk...
No, the 70s funk, horror funk.
70s
orgy.
funk,
Horror orgy?
Which has the tail, like, wrapping itself around the leg of Elizabeth Pena. And then she gets pierced through to the mouth with this kind of white-tipped, like, tusk type thing. And it is...
It's unsettling.
Yeah.
But effective.
That's absolutely the correct description for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm agreed. And, like, even the shots themselves, like, the hospital, like, a montage, if you will, like, the shot of, like, the gurney, like, the wheel, like, cutting through, like, the dismembered parts.
Oh my god, how quickly it becomes horrific.
Amazing, like, gore scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's what is it? Like, there's, like, one limb that just, like, happens to be there.
Yeah, it's just, like, there, yeah.
There's just, like, pops up, and then all of a sudden there's a ton, and then there's blood, and then there's a mountain of limbs that they have to go over top of.
Yeah, exactly. So it had, like, great, like, think of it this way, it had great horror cinematography and great war cinematography, like, combined, like cut up, like, spliced in there, and just, like, the shots themselves, like, even of New York and so forth, like, the subway shot, all of it looked great, and, I like the soundtrack a lot, by the way. Yeah, it was supposed to be disjointing, and I always took it as such, and it made sense. It made the movie work for what they were going for.
I think what definitely made those disorienting scenes work was cutting back to Tim Robbins' reaction to those disorienting scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's almost as if the director's telling the audience, like, no. He's right there with you.
Yeah,
like you're just as confused as he is.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're supposed to feel that way, and I think it was effective for that.
And I mentioned this earlier, but it feels very like a 70s style horror film in a lot of ways, which has the implication that it could be very boring and slow. Because not a lot particularly happens during this movie. Like it's sparsely spread out horror.
Yes.
And it's almost really surprising when it all of a sudden an
horror
innocent
happens.
scene will turn and you'll like he's talking to a nurse. All of a sudden the nurse her hat falls off and she has devil horns on her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it keeps you tense by constant not sparsely
it
throwing
paces,
horror.
Paces it out, if you will.
Paced well, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm definitely giving style a pretty damn strong one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
One here.
One of the strongest
Scott
ones
recommendation.
gonna get.
All right, yeah, man. I would definitely recommend it. Here's the thing, right? This was a 1990 film, so to us it's kind of like if not a cult classic, just kind of a classic. Like again, we mentioned earlier that it had it had influence on horror films and so like just film in general that came afterwards. And if you haven't seen it, I think you should see it. Like it deserves to be seen. And if you have seen it and haven't seen it in a while, like that's the case for me, I think you should check it out again because it still stands the test of time. It's quite excellent. It's paced perfectly. It's 2 hour, like slightly under 2 hours. That's a perfect length for this film. It touches on so many things in a very excellent way. It addresses a lot of interesting philosophical and even religious themes that we said. And Tim Robbins does a great job, and everyone else who supports him also does a very good job as well. So yeah, check it out again. First time viewer, check it out. If you haven't seen it in a couple years, refresh yourself and enjoy it again.
Yeah, I think that I could probably recommend this movie to almost anyone. You know, if you're like under 12, I probably cannot recommend this movie.
And if you are, why the
strongly enough,
why the fuck are you listening
watch
to
this
our
movie
podcast?
if you're under 12. It's great for kids. No, seriously, it's a terrific film. I can't think of anybody right now who I think wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
I actually feel bad that I haven't seen this before tonight.
Yeah, me too.
And I was kind of surprised about Rich and Stevo like said to us like, "You've never seen it?" And I was like, "Really?" Because you guys are pretty big movie buffs, and especially a film of this
It's
nature.
funny because like this movie has popped up like on my periphery for
Like everyone-
a number
forever.
of years.
Sure. Yeah, forever.
Sure. But yeah, so there you go.
Well, I recommended this for our viewing for MOTS-O-Ween. So, of course, I'm going to recommend this. I highly... especially if you are a fan of Silent Hill 1 or 2, or any of them, really, this was highly influential to the Silent
In fact,
Hill
I
series.
believe like it was direct influence that they took aspects from this film and put them into the games. So sure.
And keep an eye out for a cameo by Lewis Black.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
As well.
I didn't know was in this film. I'm a big Lewis Black fan until I looked it up on. I'm like, he's in this film.
A very much younger looking Lewis Black, but yeah, I think we all recommend it. It's a damn solid film. Great psychological horror flick.
Oh, definitely.
And just a good think piece.
If you want to have conversations for hours about something, watch this movie.
Yep.
So that's ones all around, and that's tens all around as well.
Yeah.
This movie gets a perfect 10 score.
It's a goddamn solid film.
Has that ever happened before?
Yeah.
I believe it has.
The Shining, I believe.
Yeah. I think
Kubo.
last MOTS-O-Ween, we gave a couple of
you
films
mean in
10.
MOTS-O-Ween? I think it was only the one.
Yeah, it was only The
Maybe.
Shining.
But this one I think deserves that score, and it in fact
I
got the score.
wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm Jonathan Manza, and this has been MOTS-O-Ween 2016 with Jacob's Ladder. I'm here with Steven Ormosi.
Have a good night.
Rich Perry.
Good night.
And Scott Thurlow.
And I'll be taking my own ladder very shortly. Good night.
Make sure you do go your other left.
I will do that.
Music by Chris Morgan.
Editing and engineering by Jonathan Ian Manzer.